Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Super pumped today to be joined by Alex Egeler, who is a coaches parents on how to find a career that fits their lifestyle. And Alex, thank you so much for joining me today on Thought Leaders Live today. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So my wife, who's a parent coach, met you on LinkedIn, started following you, loved your content, said, got to get Alex on the show. He's awesome. And and I really love your focus and your background. Let's dive right into it, Alex. We're going to talk today about how clarity solves burnout for working parents. And you know about it firsthand because you've experienced it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your very interesting journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I am an aerospace engineer, kind of by trade. That's what I went to school for. And I always knew I wanted to be a dad, always wanted to have a family. I actually really focused on making career decisions around that even before I had kids and had aligned what I thought kind of was the perfect job for when I finally did have kids. And it was interesting, not terribly taxing. I didn't really pursue moving up the ladder or stressful jobs. It was good enough in a lot of ways. And I went away on my paternity leave for my oldest son. He's 13 now, so a long time ago.
Yeah.
And when I came back, what was so interesting is my perspective had changed almost immediately in what the job was. All of a sudden, the job was just like I couldn't even stay the day. It was so frustrating and I was annoyed by the tiniest details. And I
Mhm.
realized that this was not actually the right job at all. And in fact, while I'd been gone for almost 3 months, nobody had done any of the work that was my job. They just piled on things that waited. And I had sat there and, my favorite story, I started off paternity leave with this little tiny potato that really couldn't do anything at 3 months old. And at 6 months, he was sitting up, he was babbling, he was eating food and kind of becoming a little person. And in that time, nothing happened at work. And this was kind of the first light bulb for me that this job isn't about how I make money anymore. It's really about my time. And if my job can sit for 3 months, maybe it can sit forever. And I'm not going to spend my time away from my son to do a job that doesn't matter, that doesn't isn't going anywhere, is moving too slowly. And that was really kind of the first, I'll say, awakening of I was all wrong. Everything I thought about the job that I needed to have as a dad, it's not going to work. Like I can't do this. I actually quit about a month into it and
Wow.
went to a startup, which seems kind of like the exact opposite of what you'd expect of somebody to do with a 6 month old. But I
Yeah.
moved from a place where it was nothing happened all day. Meetings were, I was just a cog in a wheel of thousands of employees. And it felt like, I don't know why I'm here, to a company where I saw the impact that I made. And I felt like, okay, it matters that I'm here. I made a impact on the company today. And that was so much more important to me than I had ever imagined before that moment.
Wow. So you're making an impact. You start to view life a little bit differently in your life, and you can see probably the impact you're making with your child, your son, your family, and you kind of want that to carry through to the workplace. What and I'm interested, you go into a startup now, that is even more draining.
Mhm.
And when did you finally decide, you know what, this still isn't right?
So I think when I look back at sort of the journey through kind of the first decade of being a dad, it really was about undoing all of the constraints I put on myself. So I had built all of these ideas around what the job had to be. It had to be, work life balance had to be a hard stop. So there was like a, impenetrable wall between the two worlds. And that was not correct. It made it a lot easier when it was easy to flow from one into the other. At the startup, we all had laptops. We were writing computer code. And if a kid was homesick, you just send a message, hey, I don't want to bring it into work. I'm going to stay home with the kid and do what I can. I joined the company, and the team I was on had 10 people, and of them, 7 had kids 5 or under. And
Mhm.
so this idea of, oh yeah, we were all working hard. We were super committed to the company and to the project, but we all were living the same life of daycare drop-offs, and yeah, we didn't make it into 10 today. And it wasn't, how could you not show up? It was, all right, what do you need me to cover? How long can you stay? What do you need to get done? We really built a culture just out of necessity. We all had families that mattered to us, and we all cared about the company. And that was really when I started to see the difference was not balance, but really integration, being able to move kind of in between the worlds of work and life and doing whatever I needed to do on each one. I didn't mind going back and checking back into my computer after bedtime because I was excited about the work I was doing. And so even though there was more time, it definitely took up more of my day to work for the startup. I just felt better all the time. I felt like my time was valuable. I felt like I was really doing the things that I needed to be doing. So the time with my kids didn't feel, it didn't feel like I was starting from, now this. It was, hey, I'm going to do this until bedtime, and then I'm going to go do that. And I'm excited for all of it. And it kind of built like a positive cycle. Like each one of them fed positively into the other,
Mm,
as opposed to
right.
when my work just felt like, I can't believe I'm doing this. It was like a downward spiral.
Right. And I think a lot of companies miss that, especially with COVID and people having to work from home. I think people become more productive because they get this kind of balance or imbalance, as we were talking about before, that works for them and works for their family. So, so sounds like everything's going great, Alex. When did you decide to move from the startup to coaching?
Yeah. So I one of the constraints that I had put on sort of my career was, oh, I don't want to get promoted. I don't want to be a manager. That'd be too stressful. Like I want to focus on kind of my family. And I let go of that one too. Um, and it turned out again, the job was absolutely more stressful, but it played to my strengths more. It turns out that I was a pretty good aerospace engineer, computer software developer, but I was a really good mentor.
Mm.
Um, and that was kind of when I did that, my days felt better. I felt like I did a better job and I provided more value, but it was actually easier for me to do. It played more to my kind of natural strengths. So I moved up in the company. Things were going well. It was hard, but good. And then, unfortunately, the company went out of business kind of in a flash. We
Ah,
were within a few weeks of actually merging into an IPO, going public, and it fell through kind of during the pandemic when aerospace and a lot of other things were a lot more unsure. And our main sponsors pulled out and the company went out of business. And it was literally like 2 months from we're going to ramp up and hire hundreds of people to closing the doors, everybody go home.
wow.
And so that was June of 2021. I was looking at my oldest was going back to school in, 2 months. My second child was starting kindergarten in, 2 months from then. And we were kind of like, this is too much. We just need a pause. And so it was tough because I had all of these contacts. I had all of these people who were so established in the aerospace industry telling me, you just tell me what you want to do, we'll find, it was a great community. Like the people all helped each other out, tried to find new jobs. And I just kind of said, I'm going to go home with the kids. I think that's what my family needs right now. And that was another, I never thought in a million years I would do something like that, but it was absolutely what the family needed. And we had twins at the time that were, they were 2 years old. They'd grown up basically in the pandemic to that point. So we knew we needed to take a moment and just sort of be ready to get back out in the world.
And I think when you're a parent, we did the same thing with my wife. Um, we had done we're looking at the numbers, and uh, we found that if she stayed home, we'd be a little bit short, but we'd find a way. And
Mhm.
you kind of find a way to figure out, and you're like, okay, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go. You're gonna stay at home. It's great. Kudos to you. Um, when did you get the bug to do the coaching?
So There's kind of two parts to the story. The first part was immediately it was very clear that I was doing the right thing. Our lives, we needed a break. We needed kind of a release from all the pressure that had been built up during the pandemic. We'd spent the first month of the pandemic with no childcare at all, right? All four kids home, 6 month, two 6-month-old twins. My wife and I working full time, trying to hold it together. And like we joke, we don't even remember what happened in that.
Yeah.
Like literally sleeping like 3 hours a night, maybe just chaos. Um, and eventually we got to a kind of more settled spot, but we knew that we just needed a reset. And I felt terrible. It felt like I was a failure because I felt my job was to financially provide for the family. And so the first big shift was kind of realizing, well, where did that come from, right? My dad had worked really hard. He was sort of the typical not home, ran his own business. And my grandfather had traveled the world for his work and had said, we've built up this, we've built up our family for you. Don't blow it.
Mm,
And I was kind of in the, well, this is it. Like I'm blowing it, right? I can't have a job and my family. I've screwed up exactly the way they said they were going to. And I kind of had to do a lot of work on myself to say, and my wife was incredibly helpful with this, around, well, why is that? Where's this feeling coming from? And what does success mean, right? I'd risen to be an executive vice president at an aerospace company. You know, what more did I take to sort of convince myself, no, I can be successful, because I didn't feel it.
sure.
And so I had to work through that, and my wife helped a lot in sort of reframing it. And eventually I got to the point of, their success criteria is not mine. Mine's going to be different, and I'm going to do it differently than them. And their stories didn't work out great. So, why would I follow those examples? And then the second piece was my oldest son had basically a mental health emergency about 6 months into the time when I had taken off work, had stepped back from the aerospace company because it went out of business. And it really changed our perspective on, what is this time with our kids? What are they going to need? What is he going to need? We basically had to drop everything to help him. And I lost my father to suicide when I was 11, which is part of
Oh, I'm
his story
sorry.
not working out very well. Um, and I was kind of like, we're not going to have that again in this family. I will be everything it will take. That's what we're going to do for it. So we reframed from, oh, daddy's taking a little time off before he goes and finds his next job, to we're going to do whatever it takes to support my son and his brothers, and then we'll have to figure it out around that. And I'd say about 6 months later, it was clear that two 40, 50, 60 hour a week jobs like we'd had before was not in the cards for us. And so that kind of left me to, well, what can I do? And I decided to kind of try out consulting. That didn't work out great for me. Turns out I'm too bossy. And if you tell me what to do, I want to tell you all the things that you really should be telling me to do. And companies didn't enjoy that. So, so I started coaching and, stumbled into a few different options. I thought that the most valuable thing I could do was around emotional intelligence, because I'd realized that was a big piece to what had gotten me ahead in aerospace engineering, and tried that a little bit, but eventually realized that it was that career journey that I went through over that decade of reshaping the constraints that I put and understanding, integration, not balance. I started talking about that on LinkedIn. And I had a friend who came to me and she said, I know that feeling you had when you went back to your job after leave and it just felt all wrong. That's how I feel right now. What would you do? Walk me through that process. And so that was kind of the beginning of the coaching. And I just came to realize that it was that disorienting feeling that I had is actually a lot more common. And I hadn't really seen it talked about anywhere.
I think what's really fascinating to me is you hit that tipping point. You got introspective. You really looked at yourself as a person and not just as someone who would go fill this career role. And you look back at your family. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody about this, and the discussion was always, it always comes back to the family. When you can go back to your roots and where you came from
Mhm.
and what motivates you as a person and your behaviors, That's when you help get some clarity, and I think that's what's so cool about what we're talking about here is this clarity that you're talking about. Can you talk to us a little bit about why this clarity and not balance is a key to reducing burnout?
Yeah. So I came to understand that what I had done right, I kind of stumbled into, but it was around, there were kind of three elements to it. I took a job that I felt very aligned with the purpose. And I'd moved from a job where I felt no sort of alignment at all. What the company was doing mattered, and I wanted to support that. And so that was the first piece. That clarity around what do I want to do and how does it actually help not just my career but the world to be a better place. And it kind of makes sense as a parent that you get that new perspective because you're not thinking about the world that you're living in now. You're thinking about the world you're handing on to them, and then even sort of what are they, handing on beyond that. Like I just felt like my perspective broadened a lot, and what I realized was I need to be leaving a better legacy behind. And so that was kind of the first piece, was just doing something at a company that I liked the work and I thought that the outcome was going to make the world a better place. The second piece was understanding, what do I do every day, just from a task by task basis, and what of that is valuable. So I had sort of thought that jobs were easy and you got paid a little bit of money, or hard and you got paid a lot of money, but that's not the spectrum that actually exists. What matters is how much value you can provide to the company. And so what I did, again, unwittingly, was I started providing more value to the company by doing something that was easier for me to do, which was to mentor, to coach, to sort of lead the team as opposed to being a team member. And that was a big light bulb of, if you can do something that is valuable, but it's easy for you to do and hard for everybody else, that saves you a lot of energy and frustration on the day. And then that's just more you have to bring home at the end to kind of give to your family. So that was kind of the second realization. And then the third one, like we talked about, was I was really holding myself back with these constraints, and digging into where those constraints came from, why I thought those were important, and what it took to let go of them, um, enabled me to go on that journey and kind of open up the aperture. And I always, people say, oh, well, did having kids make your career harder? And I'm, no, I'm so thankful for them giving me really the ability to be brave. I couldn't be brave and take these risks to go do the things that mattered for me. I just couldn't. It wouldn't have occurred to me. But for them to see them, and one of the tricks I always use in coaching, right? When I'm talking to parents, I don't know if I can go do that. Say, okay, well, let's imagine your child comes to you in 20 years and they're faced with this exact same choice, and they say, I'm not sure I can do this risky thing, or try a new career, something like that. Would you tell them, no, do the safe thing, or would you want them to go do the brave thing? And they always say, go do the brave thing. And then I say, well, where do you think they're going to learn it from, right?
Right.
If they see their parents sitting there doing the same job over and over again, complaining about it, hating it, and thinking, oh, this is for my family, it's not. That's not the message I wanted to send my kids. And again, it was hard for me to do it for me, but when I thought about it for them, and again, paying attention to the legacy I got from my dad and from my grandfather, it just, yeah, I was able to be brave for them, and I'm so thankful for it.
That's a beautiful story. And let's shift back to those identity narratives as you refer to them from your childhood.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about how that informs your career decision, and please use yourself as an example and share as much as you're comfortable with.
Sure. So my grandfather is like the classic, first in the family to go to college. He started in the mailroom at a big corporation. At one point he was like a gopher for a high executive, and then 30 years later he came back in that job as the executive. I mean, just incredible sacrifice, worked so hard, moved all over the world for this job. And it's because he grew up, he had an incredible sense of working with people. Everybody loved him. Everyone he talked to, he's just very personable. I think he had very high emotional intelligence without really sort of understanding that's what it was. Um, but he believed that his job was financial security. And he did that. He had one son, my dad. My dad went to boarding school when he was 12 years old because my grandfather was traveling the world. And he saw, they would see each other twice a year through, a little in the summer for a little while, and then at Christmas, and that was it.
Wow.
And my dad grew up with this as the model of, okay, we do everything to make, for our career success. And he did the same. He worked tirelessly. I remember him being there. I remember him sort of coming in the door for dinner and then disappearing again. And eventually the company he started to fail. And that was not the trigger for what sort of caused his eventual kind of mental health breakdown. It was many other factors we know now. But I think it was kind of the last straw. And so when I was 11, I was an only child too. So, we're a line of single parent, single children. He lost the battle with depression and took his own life. And it, obviously shook my whole world.
Yeah.
But I was 11, and the messages I took from it were around, okay, my dad's company failed and then he died. And so it's more important for be successful than it is to live, right? That was kind of
Wow.
it's easy, that was one of the messages I took away, which is why, again, when I took a job, I went to a giant corporation of, okay, this will never fail, right? We can't fail. That's the only thing we can't do. So the shift to go to a startup that ultimately would completely, fail in, headlines in aerospace news fashion was a really big step for me to kind of let go of that narrative of, no, that wasn't what happened, right? What happened was much more complicated. It was a combination of the, understanding of clinical depression in the 1990s, the medication he was on maybe not being right for him, so many other factors. But having my own son, it was like, I'm going to take care of my own mental health because I'm not going to miss out on it. I think of all the things he's missed out on in my life. But B, we're not going to let those narratives dominate my life. And that was really, again, in every step I've taken and all the twists and turns in my career. And again, if you'd asked me the week before my oldest son was born, are you going to work at this company for your entire career and retire from there? I would have said, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. This is it. It's a big corporation. There's plenty of things I can do. There's no reason for me to ever leave. And 7 months later, I was gone. And that's how much kind of the perspective shifted. And so when I started doing this work, I talked to my clients and I said, okay, well, one of the pieces we're going to dig into is going to be, where did these influences come from? And I was really nervous about it because I was kind of, again, you don't know how unique my story. People tell me all the time, oh my goodness, what a crazy story. And to me, it's just my life.
Right.
It doesn't feel that way.
Mhm.
But it has been literally every single client who's come to me with that same disorienting, there has been some thread that was traced back to, what did they see in the home? How were they treated with their siblings?
Mhm.
What did they see in their parents? The way that some element of it has hardened in their identity, in their way of viewing the world, and needs to be softened, pulled apart, inspected, understood. And so, yeah, we do the work of, what are the pieces that got you here, and what of them do we need to take forward now? Because that was really the view of it that my wife helped me understand of, you can choose, right? You can choose the storyline. The way she put it was, wherever your dad and your grandfather are, there's two ways that they're looking at you right now. When I was kind of a stay-at-home dad, they're either looking down and saying, oh, he's letting us down and he's a huge failure, or they are so grateful that you're the first one to figure out what really mattered while there was time to do something about it. And she's like, you'll never get to know. It's up to you to pick the storyline. And it was like, literally in that moment, I just felt the weight come off, right? Of,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're why wouldn't they be excited for me to do, to leave the legacy of not just, okay, financial or career success, but life success to my four boys. Um, and that, yeah, so that's we shoot for that, right? What do you pick? What storyline are you going to choose going forward? And how are we going to use that to enable you to go find the career that helps, as opposed to building the constraints that are holding you back from it?
Wow, I love that whole story, and I love taking the positive elements from it and building what you want. And you, Alex, you are a catalyst for change. I mean, I think that's what it takes to break a lot of these patterns that we all find ourselves in from our childhood, and through no fault of your father or your
Right.
grandfathers. I mean, I'm a big believer in consciousness, and I'm sure they're probably looking down and rooting for you to break free of what plagued them and doing what you're doing. I'm quite positive that they are ecstatic about your success because you've found success that really matters and
Yeah.
to you and to your family. So kudos to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Let's just we're getting close to the end of the hour,
Mhm.
top of the hour here. What are some practical ways that people can do what you've done and create this more sustainable integration between work and parenting?
Yeah, it's hard, right? I mean, I wish that there were simple tips that I can give. The best one that I have that I found for myself, I still use it all the time, is a simple reflection. So at the end of the day, on any given day, I can always tell myself, oh, I wish I'd done more, right? That's very simple, and I'm sure I could have. So I've reframed it now. I try to think about, balance to me is, did I do one thing that I'm proud of at work? Did I do one thing to build connection with my family? And did I do one thing for me, right? One thing that really supported me. Um, and just, can I name those three things on the day? If I did one of each of those, I call it a good day. That was enough. And just getting in that mindset of, okay, that's what balance looks like. It's not, did I get everything done in every area? Because that'll never happen, right? With
Right.
4 kids, it's impossible. But can I pick out a moment where, yeah, I sat down, I played a game, with my 6 year old. I had this meeting with one of my clients and I felt really good after, and I went for a walk at lunch. Okay, that was a good day.
Yeah.
And if I can't name one of those three things, right? If one of those categories is missing, and I would say, with 90% chance, if something's missing, it's the what did I do for myself that day? That's always
Right.
the one that I'm, willing to, that goes by the wayside. I just put on the calendar the next day. I said, okay,
Wow.
there's, at 12:30 tomorrow, I'm blocking off. I'm gonna go for a walk. Or 3 o'clock, I'm going to close my computer. I got to get the kids at 4, but I'll go exercise. Just making sure that I don't have too many days that get out of balance in a row. And this is kind of my simple way of, all right, let's focus. And sometimes it is something else. Sometimes it is, wow, all I did today with the kids was, make lunches, make breakfast, get them out the door, put the, like, I didn't actually stop. I didn't reflect. And so, okay, well, where can I build that in tomorrow? Just finding that, that way to use the reflection, and then, okay, did I accomplish those? No. What can we do tomorrow? That's kind of my best simple tip. Beyond that, it gets into a lot of, yeah, paying attention to what matters, paying attention to just, how do you feel at work? How do you feel when you come home at the end of the day? Um, are you excited to see your kids, or are you feeling like, ugh, not again? Because, again, I have those days every day too. And,
Sure.
I have those days some days, right? But if it's when it's every day, like it was kind of at my first job, that's the problem, right? They're not all going to be perfect. We talked about, I don't shoot for balance on any given day, but on the long run, that's what I'm aiming for.
I like that checking in on the three. And I think what's great about it too is one, you're reflecting. So, what do we have at the end of this life or as we're going through life? I would say the memories of the experiences are really what counts and what you'll remember in the long run. So you're taking a moment to remember the great things right away. But then I think when you're pausing to think deep, you're pumping the brakes on the hyperactive hive mind,
Yeah.
and you're getting introspective, and then that gives you some perspective enough to kind of evaluate some of these things. Can you just say one more time the three things again?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
that was fantastic.
Yeah, one thing that I was proud of that I accomplished at work, one thing that I did to build connection with my family, anyone in the family or multiple of them, and then one thing that I did for myself.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, Alex, we're at the top of the hour. We could chat for quite a while, I have a feeling. I really enjoyed this, and I appreciate your vulnerability. obviously a good a sign you have a high EQ, and thank you for really sharing a lot of that. That I think is very inspiring. It's going to be very inspiring to a lot of people, and also I think it's you've provided a methodology for people to get to this answer by your example, and it's you deserve a lot of praise for that, and we need more people like you in this world to kind of model that behavior.
No, I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us. Before we go, Alex, if people want to get a hold of you and work with you because they want to find either a new career that fits where they're at in their lives right now as a parent, or they want to switch careers, how do they do that?
Um, Easiest ways to find me on LinkedIn. You know, that's kind of where I interact with people a lot. I also have a website. It's empathicegg.com. You can go there
Love it.
and find, some of the resources and things that I use with my clients as well.
All right. Alex Egeler, the empathic egg.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another edition of Thought Leaders Live.